in 2024, because if the price tanks, you lose money. And especially if you're new, you're gonna make quite a few mistakes. You gotta be careful. If you buy a book, you wanna make sure there's enough. Hey, what's going on everybody? Steve here, and I am on the beautiful beach in Hollywood. And today we're actually gonna be talking about, I've got my handy dandy notes, 5 things that you're gonna wanna do before you buy a book, okay? And this is in 2024. If you've watched some of my older videos, there's some big changes that I wanna share, especially the first one that I'm gonna mention. This is something you have to do, or you can get suspended, kicked off, or even, seriously, like, I'm not trying to scare you, you can get sued selling books on Amazon. I've made videos about this, but let's just get right into it, okay? So number 1, there's a website called Book-Run, okay? It's Book Run, and they have a service called, it's not a service, but it's free. It's called Book Run Counterfeit Calculator, and I'll put some B-roll on the screen, but essentially what you do before you buy a book, especially if it's a textbook, if it's like a fiction or even if it's a nonfiction, whatever, as long as it's not a textbook, you don't really have to worry if it's gonna be something that's like highly counterfeit. It's the textbooks you really have to worry about for getting sued or counterfeits, which I guess you could get a counterfeit for other books, but it's unlikely. But Book Run Counterfeit Calculator, you add in the ISBN number and it'll let you know if the book is likely, unlikely, or highly likely to be counterfeit. And even though you still wanna check if the book's counterfeit or not before you sell any book, and there's a really good website called StopCounterfeitTextbooks.com, okay? I'll link that up down below. You always wanna make sure it's counterfeit, but some books are like way more likely to be fake. And there's actually a lot of books that get printed from India and, you know, sold on Amazon, and Amazon doesn't like this, the publishers don't like it, and you gotta be really, really careful. So if you're gonna sell a textbook especially, and if it's anything really current, you wanna run it through Book Run Calculator, the counterfeit checker calculator, okay? It's really easy. I've made videos about this, and I'll see if I can link some information up down below. Number 2, when you're out scanning books, maybe you're using Scout IQ, maybe you're using Scoutly, maybe you're using Amazon Seller app, doesn't matter. Before you buy a book, you wanna check out 2 important pieces of information, okay? Number 1 is gonna be the sales rank. Sales rank is gonna help you to know essentially when's the last time it's sold, how often it's selling, but more on a shorter time period. Whereas the eScore, Scoutly, they have a form of this as well, but with Scout IQ, there's something called eScore, which will let you know how many sales there have been of that particular book in the last 6 months. Because you could have a book that's 100,000 ranked, but the eScore, which is the 6-month sales, might only be 3 or 4. Which means maybe it sold recently, but long-term it doesn't sell very often. So sales rank and eScore is very important because, again, and I'm gonna talk about profit because obviously you're buying and selling books because you want them to make you money, but it doesn't matter how profitable a book is. If the book doesn't sell very often, or you're gonna sit on it for months and months and months, you're just losing money. You're gonna run into cash flow issues. So sales rank is like a good short-term indicator of how fast that book is selling or when's the last time it sold essentially. And eScore helps you get a big picture of the market and how often it's sold, okay? So that's number 2. Number 3, and this is a big, big mistake. You wanna make sure you do this before you buy a book. You not only wanna take a look at the FBA price, which if you're selling Amazon FBA, that's your competition, other FBA competitors, but you wanna take a look at where the merchants are at. Because you might have a book where FBA is at 60, but all the merchants might be at 30. Now, does that mean you're not gonna be able to sell it for 60 since there's a huge prime bump that's like 100%? No, you could still sell it at 60, but the reason you wanna check this out is because, in my opinion, the bigger the prime gap is, 30 to 60, that's like 100% difference, $30 difference, the more likely that book is to price tank if more sellers come on the listing and then they start trying to match closer to the merchant. So maybe it's at 60, but then someone comes on and they list it like a bozo for 32 because they're like, oh, the merchants are there. And then you have an FBA seller come down to maybe 35, and then the whole market dropped. The only thing that would really protect you against that is if the item sells really fast, because if it sells really fast, the bozos are gonna sell out and the market's gonna come back up. Okay, so the price is essentially formed around supply and demand. Okay, and that goes into another good point. So not only do you want to look at the prime difference, merchants versus FBA, but you want to take a look at how many sellers are on the listing. So you could use Keepa to do this, or you can just scan it with the Amazon seller app and take a look at the number of sellers. But you can't really get a really good picture without Keepa. But if the number of sellers is increasing rapidly, there's a good chance the price is going to go down. There's a strong correlation between the number of sellers and the price. If the number of sellers is going down and the demand stays strong or goes higher, the price will typically go up. If the demand stays the same on a book and the number of sellers is going up, it's going to typically go down in price, okay? They kind of pair together. So you want to pay attention to how many sellers are on the listing. If you notice the number of sellers is going down and the demand is going up, the price is going to probably go up, okay? So these are very important things to consider. And if the market's really strong, the rank is good, good sales history, you don't have to worry so much about the number of sellers because the market's going to gobble up, you know, any pricing inefficiencies, right? Which is called arbitrage. A lot of us make money through arbitrage. I mean, my main business is eBay to Amazon. Why? Because there's always arbitrage opportunities. But when the market's really efficient and there's a lot of demand, the price typically doesn't get hurt as much, okay? And then last but not least, I talked about profit. When you scan a book, I'm running out of breath. I'm getting a workout in this video, walking in the sand. But when you scan an item, yes, you want to make sure it's real, or at least it doesn't have a high likelihood of being fake. Running it through Book Run Counterfeit Calculator. You want to make sure there's a good rank, a good eScore. You want to be aware of the increased risk if there's a big MF to FBA gap, considering the sales rank and the selling history and the number of sellers. We talked about that. But you want there to be a good enough profit. I would say one of the biggest mistakes booksellers make is they're buying books that are only making $1 or $2 profit. And I think it's a really bad idea nowadays in 2024, because if the price tanks, you lose money. And especially if you're new, you're going to make quite a few mistakes. So you want to have a bigger profit to make up for the mistakes. If the item gets returned, you're going to be losing money on that, because returns now, it's going to cost you for the customer to return it back to you. And then if you want to get it disposed or shipped back to you, that's going to cost money as well. So you want to have a good amount of profit. I would say if you're going thrifting, for me personally, minimum of $6 to $7. I have some coaches in resellingfreedom.com. My good friend, Mike, the used book guy, I think he's at like $8 or $10 minimum now. So you got to be careful. If you buy a book, you want to make sure there's enough profit, it's worth your time, because you do have to label it, pick it, package, ship it, repricing it on the back end, so on and so forth. So you have to understand, it's not just scanning it and buying it. There's other work you have to do. So hopefully this helped. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button down below, show some love. And I'm gonna get back to this beautiful view in Hollywood Beach. Thanks, everybody.